The house had long disappeared from human memory. No one remembered when it was built. No one knew who had lived there. And no one had returned, since time began to erode every last piece of wood that remained. The roof had collapsed in sections, exposing a dull gray sky above. When the rain came, nothing stopped it anymore. It fell straight through, pooling into cold patches of mud on the ground. The walls were no longer walls. They had become fragile layers of decay, softened by moisture and years of neglect, ready to crumble at the slightest touch. Everything here had been reclaimed. Not by people, but by the forest. And then, she arrived. Tauntaun did not come in a hurry. She carried no machines. Nothing except her hands, a blade, and a gaze patient enough to understand what stood before her. She stood there for a long time, not hesitating, but studying every weakness, every remaining support, every piece that could still be used, and every piece that had to disappear completely. This was not just a house. It was a problem waiting to be solved. And if she made the wrong move, everything would collapse from the very beginning. She stepped inside. The ground was soft, unstable beneath her feet. Each step produced a subtle sound, as if the structure itself was reacting to her presence. Nothing here could be trusted. Not even the air, which carried the scent of decay. She placed her hand on a wooden pillar. With barely any force, the surface gave way, falling apart like dried mud. She did not pull her hand back immediately. She held it there, for a few seconds longer, as if confirming something she already knew. This place could not be repaired in the usual way. It had to be rebuilt. From the beginning, but not erased completely. It had to be reborn. She turned. No words. No hesitation. She began clearing. Broken wood was dragged outside. Collapsed sections of the roof were removed piece by piece. No machines. No engines. Only the sound of old material, leaving its place. The work was slow and demanding. Some beams were heavier than they appeared. Some structures, though already broken, still clung together, forcing her to use all her strength to pull them apart. Sweat mixed with moisture in the air. Her hands began to wear. But she did not stop. Not because she wasn't tired, but because she knew stopping meant starting over. Hours passed. The house began to change. Not toward completion, but toward emptiness. What no longer held value disappeared. What remained revealed itself. A skeleton, bare, but real. She stood in the center of that space. No full roof, no solid walls, only the lines of a structure waiting to become something again. And from there, everything would begin. She stepped out of the house. Not to rest, but to find what it needed. Bamboo. In this forest, bamboo was not rare. But finding the right ones, straight, strong, long enough, was another challenge. She moved deeper into the jungle. The light faded. The air thickened. The sounds of the forest grew louder without the shelter of walls. She stopped in front of a cluster of bamboo. She did not choose immediately. She observed each stalk, its curve, its strength, the way it rose from the ground. Then she placed her hand on one. Solid, stable, enough to begin. The first cut echoed. Clear, decisive. There was no hesitation. One by one, the bamboo fell. Not loudly, but enough to mark the beginning of something new. She did not pause between strikes. She worked in rhythm, steady, controlled, neither too fast, nor too slow. As if she had done this long before. When there was enough, she tied them together, with rough rope, tight, nothing loose. Then she lifted them, again, with her own strength. The path back was not easy. The ground was slippery, branches blocked the way, and every step grew heavier with the weight on her shoulder. But she did not stop, because she knew, every step forward, was one step closer to the house she had already built in her mind. When she returned, the structure no longer looked the same. It was no longer a ruin, but it was not yet a place to live. It existed somewhere in between. Between what had ended, and what was about to begin. She placed the bamboo down. No rush, no pause, just movement into the next phase. Rebuilding, she stood in the open frame, turning slightly, observing everything once more. What had been removed was not lost. It had simply made space. Space for something new. She chose a point, a corner, the place where everything would begin again. The first bamboo pole rose. Not perfectly. She adjusted it, tilted slightly, pressed deeper into the ground. Checked by sight, then by instinct. Until it stood firm. She tied it, not fast, but tight. The rope wrapped around both poles, forming the first connection. A small point, but enough to shape what would follow. She continued. A second. A third. Each pole rising. Each joint tightening, until gradually, a structure emerged. No longer scattered lines, but something organized, something intentional. Light began to filter through the spaces. The environment shifted, no longer uncertain. She stepped back, not to rest, but to see, to measure, before moving forward. Then she continued. This time, the floor. The ground below was still damp, unstable, unreliable. She needed something above it. Something dry, something firm. She began placing horizontal bamboo beams, creating a lifted frame, rising from the earth. Each joint tied carefully, each knot strong enough to hold not just her weight, but everything that would come after. There was no room for error. No second attempt. Every step had to be right the first time. Once the frame was ready, she began weaving, thin bamboo strips laid in parallel, then crossed, layer by layer, forming a solid surface. This part did not demand strength, but patience and precision. She slowed down, not from exhaustion, but from understanding that even the smallest mistake could unbalance everything. When the final layer was complete, she stood, looked down, then stepped forward. One step, then another. No cracking, no shifting, only stability. She remained there, not to test further, but to feel it. The first part had worked. The space began to transform. No longer damp soil, but a surface that could hold life. She moved on.